The crisp autumn air vibrated with the sugary anticipation of Halloween. 11-year-old me, bundled in my costume, skipped alongside Casey, my best friend. Our plastic pumpkins, already heavy with the spoils of our trick-or-treating adventure, swung between us as we crunched across the small wooden bridge spanning Jack Winkle River. The gentle murmur of the water flowing beneath usually held a soothing quality, but tonight it seemed to whisper a warning. Our carefree chatter was abruptly cut short. A black Jeep, hulking and ominous, screeched to a halt on the other side of the bridge, effectively blocking our path. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. We exchanged a nervous glance, the stranger danger lessons we'd learned echoing in our minds. Instinct took over, and we spun around, our sneakers pounding against the wooden planks as we hurried back the way we came. The Jeep's windows slid down with a soft, sinister whir. A man's voice, rough and gravelly like sandpaper scraping against wood, rasped across the twilight air. He called after us, his words laced with false urgency, pleading for help, asking for directions. "Sorry," I yelled back, my voice trembling slightly, and we quickened our pace, our candy buckets rattling a frantic rhythm. The Jeep, too large to cross the narrow bridge, roared to life and peeled away, disappearing down the road. We breathed a sigh of relief, thinking we had escaped the unsettling encounter. But our relief was short-lived. Suddenly, an SUV, equally dark and imposing, careened around the corner, its tires squealing in protest as it slammed on the brakes directly in front of us. Our hearts leaped into our throats. The SUV's windows descended, revealing the interior. Inside, two figures loomed. In the back seat, an older man with shock of gray, curly hair and a thick, gray mustache sat like a gargoyle. His voice, when he spoke, was eerily similar to the first man's, a smoker's rasp that sent shivers down my spine. He offered us free bags of candy, his words a thinly veiled attempt to lure us closer. The driver remained silent, his presence adding to the growing sense of dread. The black Jeep, as if summoned by some unseen force, executed a sharp three-point turn and reappeared, now tailing us relentlessly. The two vehicles had us boxed in, their presence a suffocating weight. At one point, the Jeep surged forward, overtaking us before screeching to a halt. The back and front passenger doors swung open simultaneously, and the two men emerged, their movements jerky and menacing. They lunged towards us, their outstretched hands like grasping claws. Our carefully collected candy spilled onto the pavement, scattering like fallen leaves in a sudden gust of wind. We didn't even think about it. Our only thought was escape. My house, a beacon of safety, was just within sight. We sprinted towards it, our breath catching in our throats, our legs pumping like pistons. We pounded on the doorbell, our fingers trembling as we pressed the button again and again, desperate for someone to answer. Our pursuers, thankfully, were not as fast as us. The sight of my house, our sanctuary, seemed to deter them. They stopped their pursuit and turned back. Just as we reached the door, it swung open, revealing my mom's worried face. We tumbled inside, a torrent of frantic words tumbling from our lips as we pointed toward the retreating Jeep. My mom, her face etched with fear, pulled us inside and slammed the door shut, the click of the lock echoing in the sudden silence. She immediately called the police, her voice trembling as she relayed the details of the encounter. The black Jeep, the SUV, the three men with their raspy voices. Any detail, no matter how small, that we could remember. That night was a blur of fear and anxiety. My mom paced the floor, her worry a palpable presence in the room. She couldn't shake the feeling that the men knew where we lived, that our safe haven had been violated. My dad tried to reassure her, but her fear was a living thing, refusing to be calmed. The police, understanding the gravity of the situation, agreed to send an unmarked police car to patrol our street for the next 3 hours. The presence of the officer, a silent guardian in the night, provided a small measure of comfort, but the knot of fear in my stomach remained tight. Finally, the longest night of my life began to give way to the first rays of dawn. My dad woke Casey and me, his voice unusually calm. He led us to the window, and our eyes widened in disbelief. Outside, the flashing red and blue lights of a police car illuminated the street. An SUV had been pulled over, and 3 men, their faces grim and defeated, stood in handcuffs. It was them, the men from the Jeep, the men who had chased us, the men who had tried to kidnap us. My dad went outside to speak to the officer, presumably confirming the identities of the captured men. Casey and I, emboldened by the sight of our captors in custody, ran to the doorway. We screamed at them, our voices filled with a mixture of anger and relief. They looked up, their eyes meeting ours, and in that moment we knew that they had been caught. We both, without thinking, gave them the finger, a childish gesture of defiance against the fear they had instilled in us. My mom, seeing our outburst, pulled us back inside, gently but firmly closing the door. She sent us to bed, the relief washing over us in waves. What had started as the worst night of our young lives had, against all odds, transformed into the best. We had faced our fears, and in the end we had triumphed. The memory of the chilling encounter would linger, but would be forever intertwined with the feeling of victory and the unwavering protection of our family and the police.